Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marion Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to learn and grow together? Then let's get started. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Association of Professional Genealogists. You can find out more about them at www.apgen.org. Welcome to Episode 7 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we travel to sunny California to catch up with genealogist Sheri Fenley. Sheri, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I am thrilled, as is I'm sure everyone listening, to have you on the podcast today, Sheri. We all know we're in for some good fun, so.
That's me.
So for those of you who don't know you, let's get started by having you tell us about yourself and give us an overview of your genealogy business.
Okay, let's see. I'm a first-generation Californian. My parents and their two previous generations come from Kansas. I am married. My husband is a fourth-generation Stocktonian and a fourth-generation longshoreman here at the Port of Stockton. I have 3 grown sons and a cat named Fred. Let's see. I do mainly, I hate to just narrow it down. I do mainly Northern California research. That seems to be where most of my work is coming in recently. And I do lineage research, lineage applications. Quite a few of those for different lineage societies.
So, Sheri, what inspired you to become a genealogy professional?
I guess it was when I first decided to start doing genealogy. You know, I wanted to start learning how to do it. I knew there had to be a right way to do it. You know, as in any kind of research, there has to be some kind of education behind it. But it was when my father passed away in 1988. And he died very young. He was 52. After the funeral, I received a box of photographs from my uncle. And in it were pictures of my dad when he was a baby and when he was a little boy and when he was a Cub Scout. And I was just floored. It never occurred to me that my father had a life before me. And, you know, I just had never thought about it. And that got me to thinking that I needed to learn more about my family. And then in doing that, I am real detail oriented. So if I'm going to learn how to do research my own family, then I need to learn how to do it properly. So that's what started it all.
Most people come to genealogy from another profession. Did you have an opportunity to work at something else before you started in genealogy?
Actually, I was a very boring administrative assistant for a chemical company here in Stockton. It was it supported the family, but it was just not for me. So fortunately, when I married my husband, this is my second husband, it allowed me to not stop working at that job and pursue my genealogy profession.
So what did you do to prepare yourself to become a genealogy professional, both from an educational point of view and from a business skill point of view?
Well, from a business point of view, I pretty much had the accounting, background for it from my previous employment. But for my genealogy education, at the time there was nothing like they have now. All the educational opportunities that are out there now. About the only thing I could find was a 2-year class, 4 semesters, at Monterey Peninsula College, where Karen Clifford, who's an accredited genealogist, teaches. And by the time I found that class, I thought I knew so much, right? And I really wasn't thrilled about starting a baby class, which I thought it was. But I realized how much I didn't know and how much I really wished I had found a solid grounding, a solid background with the fundamentals before I had chased my tail for so many years. After I took the 4 semesters of that, I got a certificate for it. I went to the IGHR in Samford for a couple of years, which I highly recommend to anyone to attend, either SLIG or the one in Samford or the new one, GRIP, that's in Pennsylvania, I believe. I also I make sure I go to all the conferences, as many as I can. Those are just invaluable. And I guess that's, I take advantage of any educational opportunity. I was in the first ProGen class that started back in 2008, I think it was, which was invaluable for both business and for honing your research skills. I highly recommend it.
So you mentioned that you brought some accounting skills with you when you started your business. Did you have any other skills that helped you out that you brought from either previous jobs or previous training in another kind of field?
I would say just being detail oriented, and that's from schooling and from my previous employment. I'm almost detail oriented to a fault. Sometimes it gets in the way because I stress on it too much. But you really have to be detail oriented. You have to be organized and have a clear pathway of how you're going to attack a new client with their research.
So what skills did you lack when you started your business, and how did you overcome that?
Oh, gosh. I would say product-wise, writing. My writing, as far as report writing is for a client, is totally different than writing a paper for school, for instance. It's a whole different way of writing, and I still struggle with it, but I keep plugging away at it. And for business-wise, I think I lacked marketing. I wasn't sure how to market myself. And again, I've educated myself on that as well by the APG has had several workshops online that have helped me with learning how to do that.
Can you give me a couple examples of something you didn't know how to do before with marketing, or a tip that you learned at one of these APG seminars that you said, okay, I haven't done that, now I need to do that, and you implemented it? Give me an example of something that you've done.
Oh, gosh. Besides, just to get your name out there, you got to get your name out there. Get yourself a blog. Make sure you have a website presence online with a business website, and that is separate from your blog. I do not recommend combining the two. Make sure that you're on Twitter. I mean, that may sound a bit frivolous, but you would not believe the networking that goes on with the Twitter and the Facebook. And get yourself out of the house and attend a local genealogical society, in person with people. It's word of mouth. I just cannot stress that enough. It's word of mouth, I think, in our genealogical community of what your skills are and what you're capable of doing, and that it does get around, and people, they won't know who you are if you're sitting at home. That and the old-fashioned business card.
So what was the hardest part about starting a genealogy business?
Developing a clientele, repeat customers, I think was really difficult. That and learning when to stop. You want, it's like 15 minutes more, half an hour more. You think that you're going to, have this perfect presentation for the client. But in fact, all you're doing is really hurting yourself, because the next time if your client hires you again, they're going to expect that much work and that quality of work for a certain amount of time period. And that just doesn't happen. So you really need to really try to stick within the time frame that you contracted with your client.
So in terms of repeat business, getting repeat clients, did you initiate something like suggesting further research in your reports or your proposals, or what did you do to encourage clients to come back to you?
Well, I think I can pretty much tell if a client is going to be a one-time deal, or if there's a possibility of it being a long-term relationship. I think because I get so excited over the research myself. Every new client is a whole new research project, and I just find those absolutely thrilling. And I guess maybe it's the enthusiasm and how excited I am when I show them my findings, and they want to continue and keep going. That, and I think it's the quality of work and the quality of research. Your ability to follow the correct lines, that you know what you're doing, I guess. I've just been real fortunate and do have a couple of long-term clients.
Share a story of an obstacle or a challenge that you encountered early in your career and how you worked around it.
Oh, man. Being out here in California, I am really geographically challenged severely as far as compared to genealogists that are located back east. I mean, let's face it, everyone started back east and then migrated west. So when people start wanting their lineage researched, they typically will want a genealogist that lives in the area back east, and by the time they get out this way, there's not that much interest. So yeah, it's a little, except for like the Spanish land grants, the early Spanish land grants, there really are not any records and research like before the 1840s here in the West.
So how have you gotten around that? If that's an obstacle, how have you dealt with it?
I've dealt with it by kind of, let's see, I'm not sure how to explain this, but I've offered a little bit different kind of service, and that started with the whole fluke too, of doing historical research, not so much for just genealogists, but for an author. For example, I did some work for an author that wanted some background on what it was like to be a school teacher in Marysville, California in the 1880s. So he sent me for a week up to Yuba County, and I learned what it was like to be a male school teacher in the 1880s for him. And he used that background research in a book that he was writing.
So now that you have this experience doing this historical research for this author, how are you going to let other authors know that you're available to do more of that kind of research?
Well, that's, again, learning how to market myself, and that's a whole different venue of potential clients out there. Word of mouth is quite valuable, especially if you've done a really good job for someone. They have no problem tooting your praises. That is a whole, I really haven't explored.
Have you talked to the major libraries in your area? Because I know on your website you list the archives and libraries that you go to.
Yes, I have a really good working relationship with the librarians and the archivists in San Joaquin County, as well as the state archives in California and the Sutro Library.
So they know that they should refer you to authors as well as genealogy clients?
Absolutely.
Good.
Our local historical society, the archivist, in fact, sends a lot of work my way, because people they range in everything from wanting pictures of old farm equipment to what was it like to be a migrant worker in the 1920s, or it's amazing all the different types of opportunity that's out there for not just genealogical research but for historical research as well.
Right, I agree. I agree that sometimes I think genealogists don't realize that their skill set is the exact same skill set that can be used in different ways in different areas for different clients. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. Tell us about that moment in your business when everything started to come together and you started to be really confident about where you were heading.
It was actually before I started taking clients. It was I needed validation, that for my own self, that I knew what I was doing. I submitted an application for membership to DAR, and I knew that if they verified it, because I would just be ecstatic and I would feel validated. I did all the research myself, gathered all the documentation myself, and my ancestor was a new patriot. So there was a lot of research involved and a lot of documentation to be able to prove to them that my ancestor did in fact serve during the Revolutionary War. So that was when it all came together for me. That's when I knew I know what I'm doing and I have the confidence and I move forward.
That's good that you put yourself to the test like that. I like that. Now, before we go any further, we're going to stop and we're going to do a little alphabet soup for all the people listening, because there are people listening all around the world. So we're going to start with the DAR. What's that?
Yes. Actually, it's NSDAR, National Society, Daughters of the American Revolution.
Okay, so that's an American organization, but non-Americans can belong as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
we have women that live in England and in Europe that have ancestors that actually served as some type of service during the American Revolution. Lots of French. We had in New Orleans there was Lafayette and his band of merry men that helped out, and lots of Spanish patriots as well.
Okay, so DAR, NSDAR is American
National Society.
Yeah.
Daughters of the American Revolution.
And it's an American patriot organization. You
must prove lineal blood descent to someone that a man or a woman that served in some sort of fashion for the American side during the American Revolution.
And earlier you mentioned SLIG, so let's cover that one.
Okay, SLIG is the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy.
And that is coming up actually next week.
Next week, yes, It is. I believe they held it. They have it every January in Salt Lake City, and it's one that I haven't been able to attend yet. But again, there's no experience like immersing yourself in a week-long course. With a tight little classroom of other genealogists with you, and you're just immersed, all day long, 5 days for 5 straight days. It's you come away a whole different person, that's for sure.
And another one you mentioned earlier was GRIP, which I believe stands for Genealogical Research Institute, Pittsburgh,
I believe.
Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I believe you're right, Pittsburgh.
And this is a newer institute, but it has just been going gangbusters with some really top-notch people teaching that.
Absolutely. Alyssa Powell is one of the directors for that, and it's wonderful. The other one is the IGHR, the Institute of Genealogy and Historical Research at Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a whole different experience than what SLIG is. I think it's like summer camp for genealogists. That's what I called it. It was a wonderful experience.
Okay, good. Thank you. So that's just to give a little background for all these acronyms that we're throwing at you. I realize not everybody is at the same level and is going to be familiar with these groups, and not everybody is in the United States and might be familiar. Every time I talk to somebody, like last week talking to someone from Canada, I learned things that I wasn't familiar with. So we just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to
absolutely.
learn
and
what...
I forget myself sometimes.
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I will have links to all of those in the show notes for Sheri's episode.
Okay, great.
So tell us about the services that you offer. Have they changed from when you started out to where you are now? Do you offer more? Do you offer less? Have you just changed what you offer?
Well, I don't do as many record pulls as I used to. When I first started out, volunteering to do record pulls, actually, and volunteering to do obituaries, looking up obituaries and whatnot, just to get my name out there. You pretty much have to give it away for free almost at the beginning. I think I'm more select on what type of a job I'll take. And like I said, expanding into doing historical background research is something that I didn't offer at the beginning, which actually I love just as much as doing lineage research. And you have to know both. You really have to know the historical background of an area and the history of an area in order to know what records were created to do your research. So it behooves you to know both.
What are some of the unique services you offer that make you different from other genealogists? You've talked about the historical research, but I know there's one other thing that you have on the front of your website right now, a new service that you're offering.
Well, yeah, actually, I did. And that came from actually a couple of local clients that had just boxes and boxes of stuff, of their papers, and they just had no idea of how to even begin to organize it. So, I started offering, give me your boxes and I shall organize you to no end. And that seems to be quite a popular thing, at least locally here. Obviously, a long distance client, unless they're going to FedEx boxes to me. But it helps too. Once I have it organized, I show them, how to scan them, how to put them on their computer, and they can either archive those papers or ditch them, which is, that's probably blasphemy. And a lot of people don't know how to even simply enter information into their software, into their genealogy software. So I've started offering that, and it's really, really popular with the older generation here locally.
I would think that would be a great service. I could even use that service. Somebody to hold my hand and help me get organized.
Sometimes it takes someone with a whip and a chair, to tame the beast.
What has been the most challenging aspect of being a genealogy professional from a business point of view?
Time. Putting more time into a project than I'm contracted to do because I want it to be, perfect. Yeah, I just cannot do that. I've been able to overcome that with something really simple. I set the timer in my kitchen for a certain amount of time, and when the timer goes up, I have to get up out of the chair to go shut it off. So when I get up out of the chair, I shut the door and time is over. That's been real hard for me to do, but it's working.
All right, so for that to be effective, it has to be one of those timers that doesn't automatically shut off by itself.
Yes,
right?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It has to be one of those annoying ones that doesn't stop until you get up and turn it off.
Yeah, I've got one of those too. I don't use it for genealogy work, but I definitely use it for my cooking. So how do you balance paid work versus volunteering?
Oh, actually, I've just now, that's funny you should mention that, with the new year, I've took a good hard look at all the volunteer work I do, which I love every bit of it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I can't say there's any of it that is boring or that I hate. I sit on the board for the Association of Professional Genealogists. I am secretary for the California State Genealogical Alliance, and I'm president of my local genealogical society. And then I do a lot of, I do indexing, for the Missouri State Archives and for Family Search and the 1950 census, that new project that just started up. So what I finally did is I sat down and I had to make some choices, some hard choices of where am I doing the most good? Where am I being effective, and am I making a difference? If I'm not, if there's others 1,000 more just like me, then I just let the 1,000 others, let them have at it, and focus my attention where I can do the most good, and that I'm going to enjoy it myself.
What's the breakdown with your volunteering between stuff that's online and things that you have to do face to face or at a location? Right.
At this point, I would say it's about 60% face to face and about 40% online. 60% that requires me to physically be someplace.
Sheri, what is the most fun project that you've ever worked on that you can share with us?
I thought long and hard about this. I'm going to say it is my sister doing research, and I continue to do research on my sister-in-law's family. There is nothing more exciting when you can research a socially prominent family in an area where they've lived for generations upon generations. Her family were Bavarian Jews that came to San Francisco in the 1840s and became very, very wealthy, very socially prominent, and remain so to this day. It's just a delight to be able the records that they leave, and just the newspaper articles in the social columns every day has just been a delight for me. Such fun to read and to research.
What was the main business that these people did that established them so well in America?
General merchandising, and they were into banking as well, major banking, which they still are into the banking as well. They don't do the general merchandising so much. I think what they decided when they came in the 1840s, right before the gold rush, they decided not to mine themselves, but to sell to the miners. So they weren't your average peddlers, but they had very large wholesale mercantile stores.
Have you written any articles on them?
Yes, I did. Actually, I got published for the very first time in the California Genealogical Society Quarterly, The Nugget, and they published an article on the David Wolter family that I did.
And speaking of writing, have you diversified your services beyond client research with writing or speaking? Now, you've done it with the organization a service. Any other?
I believe it or not, I just am not comfortable talking in front of people.
That is hard to believe.
In front of a large group of people, I'm just not real comfortable with that. So although I am a speaker groupie, and several of my good friends are very good speakers and lecturers and educators. That's just not really my thing. But doing what I do and struggling again, I'm trying to do more articles for publications for the APG Quarterly. I'm working hard on an article for that. That's the Association of Professional Genealogists quarterly. And then for my local society, I write for the newsletter in my local society and for the California Genealogical Society. And I enjoy that. And that's not so much a service, but it's, well, in a way, it's providing a service. It's educating, isn't it, when you write an article?
Articles can fall into two categories. They can be a way that you earn money, by submitting an article for pay to a magazine. And they can also be a marketing piece. And both of those are equally viable, or those are both equally important reasons for perhaps writing an article, because as a marketing piece, you're getting your name out there. More people are going to hear about you. And then, of course, if you're being paid to write, then you're helping to earn a living. So that's a good thing, too.
Right. Well, my dream is one day to have the good enough writing skills to be published in the NGS Quarterly. That is one of my dreams.
Oh, that's a great goal.
Yes. I was on the clock for BCG for a year, and I had to make the decision whether to go ahead and stretch it out another year or just, I just could not devote the time to it that it really needs to do. If you're going to do something like this, you really need to not do anything else for that whole year except your portfolio. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, and I hope to go back on the clock again, maybe next year or maybe the year after when I finish my other volunteer obligations, serving, on boards and whatnot.
Well, it is a really big commitment, and I think the important thing when you're considering doing BCG is to be true to yourself.
Absolutely.
And you have to do what's right for you and not think about anybody else or not worry about what somebody might think of you or anything, because it is a huge commitment.
It is. And, and somebody asked me once when I went on the clock last time, why are you doing this? Are you wanting to become part of that elite society? And I said, no, again, it's me. I need the pat on the head. I need the validation. I think that I've worked up myself to a better and higher level than I did when I first submitted that DAR application way back when. And now I need to validate where I'm at now. And I think BCG can do that for me if I can, devote a year of my time and commitment to doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a really big consideration for myself. Perhaps someday I would like to do the certification process, but I know until my kids are out of the house, it's not really an option for me.
Absolutely. And my sons are all grown and gone. So it's a world of difference when you have a young family like that to take care of.
Let's take a quick break to hear a message from the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Hello. This is Kimberly Powell, President-elect of the Association of Professional Genealogists. APG is an international membership organization dedicated to supporting all individuals in the business of genealogy, whether you're an archivist, librarian, educator, writer, or researcher. Our 2,600 members include genealogists at all stages of their professional careers, from those just starting out to some of the field's most renowned leaders. Learn how to grow your business and network with other professionals through our educational webinars, informal mentoring groups, active discussion list, the APG Quarterly, and our annual Professional Management Conference. Visit us online at apgen.org to learn how we can help you on your professional journey and how you can help us advance public awareness and understanding of the profession of genealogy.
All right, Sheri, the time has come. We are about to enter the lightning round.
Oh my gosh, okay.
Yep.
Am I ready? I'm ready.
Well, I don't know. I'm going to hit you with a whole bunch of questions, and you're going to come back with advice that's going to be great for all the genealogists out there listening.
Okay.
Shall we do it?
I'm ready. I'm ready if you are, Marian.
I'm ready. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
Failure.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Never shake hands with a lobster.
You want to explain that? How does that apply to your business?
Hey, I thought this was the lightning round.
Well, it is. But you can't toss something like that out there and
Okay. How about if you feel like you're being dragged, let go of the leash. And I think that's another one of my favorites. And that falls along the lines of being true to yourself. Okay. Don't be dragged around by the nose by, yes, you have standards that you probably need to pay attention to, and you want to put out the best quality work as possible, but at the same time, be true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the best advice I have.
Okay. What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Start a blog. Start a blog. If you're afraid of getting yourself out there, if you're shy, start a blog, and that's pretty faceless to begin with, but yet you're getting your feet wet in the pond.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. What is your preferred social media channel?
Facebook.
With colleagues, clients, or both?
With colleagues.
Okay.
I don't interact with clients on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe wouldn't have any if they did. Yeah, I don't think that's a venue for clients.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it is.
So that's a networking channel.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Or a have fun channel.
Yeah, I do use Google Hangouts, though. I use that with clients quite a bit, which I absolutely love. That way we get face-to-face, even though we live thousands of miles apart.
Mm-hmm. That's great. You're the first person I've heard of. I'm sure there are others, but you're the first one I've talked to who does Google Hangouts with clients, so that's excellent. All right, if you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
Well, I actually have two, Marion, and they are oldies, but, I love them, and they're right there on my shelf. The first one is Genealogy as a Pastime and Profession by Donald Lyons Jacobus. And the other is Pitfalls in Genealogical Research by Milton Rubenkamp. Any genealogist worth their salt should have those on their shelf.
Okay. Let's present a hypothetical scenario. You have to move across the country. You don't know anyone, and you're not familiar with the research or the record groups in that new location. What are you going to do in the first month to hit the ground running and start a new genealogy business?
Well, I would absolutely hit all the repositories and introduce myself to the archivist, to the county recorder's office, and talk to the clerks, just to, for them to get familiar with me. And it's good to have a really good working relationship with your local repositories as far as when you want to do research. You get better service and more help when you're on a one-on-one personal basis with these people. I definitely would join the local genealogical society. That would be a must. The libraries. Oh gosh, and I do some old-fashioned business card work. I leave my business cards at the different repositories. A lot of them offer that. In fact, they keep a lot of them keep a list of people that do research, so that when anybody asks them, then they have someone they refer them that way. And it's not publicly well known, but just ask. Ask your local county recorder or your local archivist, if they keep a list of researchers, and get your name put on that list.
Good advice. Give our audience one parting piece of advice, and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
Jump in with both feet. This is really not something that's this profession is not something that you want to just tip your toes in. If you want to make a living at it, you really need to jump in and make a splash. As far as getting a hold of me, you can get a hold of me through my business website, sherifenley.webs.com, or my blog, The Educated Genealogist, sherifenley.blogspot.com, email sherifenley@gmail.com, or Twitter, Sheri Fenley, Facebook, Sheri Fenley.
You have got it all covered, Sheri.
That's me. I'm everywhere, Marion.
We will put all the links to all those in the show notes for your episode, so people don't have to remember those or jot those down. And then people can start to connect with you via their preferred method.
I'll be right here for them.
And I would recommend not contacting a fellow genealogist via all of those. That would be a little bit of an overkill. But
get your point across that you want to talk to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Sheri, it has been truly wonderful having you on the Genealogy Professional Podcast today. Thank you so much for coming by.
Oh, thanks for having me, Marion. It was wonderful.
Well, we got loads of great information from that discussion with Sheri Fenley. We learned about schools. We learned about different types of services that you can offer. There were just a whole bunch of tidbits that you can take away and think about for your own genealogy business. Now, in terms of an action item that I'd like you to think about for the next week, I'd like to focus in on what Sheri was saying about going and getting to know the people at the archives and letting them get to know you. So let's make that our action item for this week. So the first thing to do is to think of what is a library or a society, a research society, or an archive near you that you could target as that one location where you're going to try and build a relationship with the staff. Okay, so that's your first job, is to pick the location. Now, the second thing I want you to do is to figure out how you're going to make an appearance there. And this is the thing. I know some of you are shy and you're saying, okay, I can go, but what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to make it easy for you. Okay, this is what you do. The best way to let people get to know you is to let people see you. And then the more that they see you, they will start talking to you because they'll see you coming back. So if you're in a position that you can go someplace daily, like every day for a week or every day for 2 weeks, and you happen to be shy, this is the route you want to take. Go to that location and don't put yourself under pressure of having to talk to anybody, but just go there and then come back the next day. Let them see that you're coming back and then come back a third day. And then one of the staff members might start talking to you and say, hey, what are you working on? How can I help you? Or you might have a natural interaction because obviously when you go, you're going to have to work on something. You can't just sit there. So you'll probably need to ask for manuscripts or documents or records or something, and you'll be able to interact with the staff that way. You can do this even if you're shy. Now, if you're not shy, you break the ice right away. Say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm new here, and this is what I'm researching, and I just wanted to say hi. Now, some of you I know are saying, well, that's kind of goofy, but I guess I'm kind of goofy because that's what I do everywhere I go. I just say, hey, I'm Marianne. I haven't been here before. Can you tell me, how things operate here? What do I do for record pulls? What do I need to do to request services like using the microfilm, something like that? So introduce yourself, ask for help. So if you're a little bit braver, you can take that approach. Okay? So that's your action item for this week. Identify a location where you're going to start building a relationship with the staff and then figure out a plan that you can be seen repeatedly in that location. Now, if you can't go daily because you have a full-time job or something like that, figure out their Saturday schedule. This has to be a location that has to be open on a Saturday, and then commit yourself to 3 or 4 Saturdays in a row where you can go there and start to build a relationship with the staff that way. All right, well, I hope that you got a lot out of this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So until then, so long.